guys. I don't know how to start this. I'm sure a lot of you guys know, based off of Facebook, but for those of you who don't, on Saturday, Robert had 2 different strokes. And there's been a lot of different stories going around of what actually happened. And so Austin reached out to Robbie, who was here the whole time when it all went down. And I want Robbie to tell you guys exactly what happened because I wasn't even here for the beginning part of this.
Any other day out catching an alligator with Rob. We started in a pond just over here to our left. Caught about a 6.5 foot alligator. Everything was great. We moved on to check another pond trying to find a big gator that is supposedly out here. While looking in another pond, 2 sales ladies from the community came over on a 6-seater golf cart and said, hey, we can take you right where the big alligator is. So we took a ride over to where we are right now to this pond. Didn't see an alligator. We turned the gator call on. All we had was the gator call and rod. Gator shot off the bank, came out into the water. Rob was able to throw, get a cast right on the gator. We got him hooked. This is actually the hook that caught the alligator that day. Rob had tied this specifically for this alligator. He was so excited to try it out and put it to use. Fortunately, we didn't have anything else over here with us. We were parked across the pond out here in this field, so I got a ride back over to the truck to bring it over so we could go ahead and finish catching this alligator. While doing so, unfortunately, something happened. As I was pulling back up, jumped out of the truck, Rob turned and looked at me and said, you have to get me to the hospital, something's wrong. I looked at him, I could kind of tell he didn't look right, and I said, what do you mean? He says, I don't know, something's wrong. I walked towards him, he stumbled a little bit like he was gonna fall. He dropped the fishing pole. I was able to reach down and grab it. It still had the alligator attached to it. We had another trapper with us, thankfully, was able to go ahead and get control of the fishing pole so we could get Rob in the truck. Backed out of here, thankfully, for whatever reason, we happened to be here, and the hospital is about 10 minutes from here. We got in the truck, we were able to back out. We got Aria in the truck with us. Pulling out of the community, Rob was kind of rocking back and forth, and before he passed out on me, I started to ask him what was wrong so I could relay the information to the hospital. At that point in time, he still was able to speak. He just said he wasn't sure. He felt dizzy. His head did not feel right. And that's when he started slurring words really, really bad. I'd say overall it took us about 6 to 7 minutes to get to the hospital. About halfway there, he said we had to get there faster. It was getting worse. He wasn't right, and you could barely understand anything at all that he was saying. They called for an emergency in the ER room at the front counter. The doctors came out. He wasn't even able to talk at that point. I realized I needed to reach out to Sarah to let her know what was going on, but unfortunately, when we rushed out of here, I didn't have a phone. Rob didn't have a phone. We had nothing at all.
We drove separate that morning. So I had Emma and Robert had Aria, and they were meeting Robbie because Robbie already had everything dialed in here. I just saw the fear in Rob's eyes, and it's just really hard. It's really hard to know that something is going wrong and you don't know how to fix it, and you don't know the level of it, of if it's permanent, if it's not. You just don't know all these things when something happens. So it's really, really scary. When Robert did get moved to the ICU, they took another CAT scan, and it showed that the front of his brain had blood on it. It was bleeding. They called it a bleeding stroke. Well, that night at 2:45 in the morning, he wakes up. So Sunday morning, he wakes up and he's seen double. So the clock, there's 2 of them. Fingers, there's instead of 2, there's 4. And he was getting sick again, super nauseated, super dizzy. And so they rushed him to another CAT scan. Well, the next CAT scan showed that he had a second stroke. And the second stroke was because of lack of oxygen. Again, this is just super scary stuff. Robert's a healthy guy. Before all this happened, he didn't eat or drink anything all morning. And when they were on a first gator earlier that day, he caught a gator already with Aria. But then when he heard it could be a bigger gator, he got really excited. He was waiting for me to come. He wanted to film it. So he chugged a Red Bull. And the Red Bull is the cause of the first stroke. It's RCVS is what Robert had. There's been so many people who reached out to us and so many people who care for Robert, and it's so touching to see. And we've asked for prayers, and it's really hard to accept help from people because we've worked so hard to get to where we're at, and we always try to help other people. So it's been a huge challenge to let people help us. And just prayers alone is all I'm asking for, to continue letting him heal in the right direction, because he is susceptible in the first little bit for something like this happening again, for him to have a relapse. So I'm doing my best to keep him at bay and not go past these limits that he has to set for himself. But it's just been really, really emotional to watch my husband, who's 46, have 2 strokes when he's really healthy. But I know he's so thankful. He hasn't even had his phone since Saturday. I took it away. I'm trying to let his brain rest. So I took it away, and I'm trying to just not let him look at a screen or look at a phone or worry about work and business and all the bills. I don't want him to worry.